Hey, what's up guys? This is Brandon here again with Emerald Coast Pro Plus Detailing in Gulf Breeze, Florida, doing a little segment I like to call the detailed review. So today what we're going to be doing is comparing or debunking I guess not really a myth, but just something that's been floating around is do synthetic clays or clay tiles, clay mitts, whatever you want to call them, do they work, and do they work as good as traditional Claybar? So there's a lot that goes into this, and obviously opinions will vary. What we're trying to do here is just to give some factual information and real results on do these products work, or is it just a marketing ploy? So before we start, we kind of want to explain what Claybar is for those of you who don't know. And basically Claybar is a way to decontaminate your paint. Your paint will get contaminated with environmental factors such as minerals, grime, just environmental debris and fallout. Especially in areas that are very warm, places like here, like in Florida, where your paint is getting so hot it's constantly expanding and contracting. Things get trapped in the paint. Washing is not going to get rid of them, so what we have to do is we have to Claybar them. Claybarring and decontamination is a very, very essential part of not only making your car look good, but making the products that put on your car last as long as possible. I've always used the little comparison to when you're repainting a fence. You would definitely never want to just repaint over a fence that has paint flaking off of it. You want to get that all off. If you don't, then that underlying layer that is peeling off is going to it's going to take whatever's on top of it off with it. So it's kind of the same thing with a car. If you're just putting wax or sealant or a coating or anything like that on top of a dirty car, it's never going to bond, it's never going to last. You're really just wasting your time and money. So really what we always recommend, whether you're a hobbyist, enthusiast, or a professional, is Claybar. We Claybar probably 90% of the cars that we do that come in here. Really the only ones that we don't do are ones that are ceramic coated. However, we do perform what's called a chemical decontamination, and we will get into that a little bit as this video goes on. So this video isn't really to compare brands, it's more or less to compare the methods in decontaminating a car. So there's two different ways that you can decontaminate a car. One is chemical and one is physical. So chemical is where you would use something which isn't kind of shown here, but you may use like an alkaline degreaser or something like that. They may help break down certain things within the paint. Really the best way to do it though is to use something like a fallout remover. Now fallout remover it's pretty awesome. Some people don't really know a lot about it other than the fact that it turns things purple. The reason why it does that is it actually deoxidizes ferrous metals and materials, carbon deposits that have blended in your paint. But they can also help remove other elements too. They actually are an acid. A lot of people don't know that. They have two types of acids in them, the most aggressive of them being an oxalic acid. So it's very important that when you're using this is that you really shouldn't use it in the sun. The other type of acid that it has is more of like a neutralizer. It has a little bit higher of a pH, so it kind of levels it off, but it still can damage paint. So when you do use fallout removers, make sure the car is in a cool area, it's not hot, things like that. But we don't want to get too much into what fallout removers do in this video, but we want to show how you can use them with Claybar and clay tiles. So chemical decontamination is awesome. It's very, very important. It's going to get deep in those pores and help decontaminate the paint. Obviously the second form of decontamination is physical. So that's where you would take your old-fashioned either traditional Claybar, or you do something like a synthetic clay towel, whether it be something here, we have an Optimum clay towel or a Speedy surface prep towel. These are both great. Clay towels, in theory, are meant to do lighter decontamination. However, when mixed with something like a chemical decontamination, as you'll see in the video, you'd be surprised how much they can get out. So I don't want to give too much away, but don't sleep on clay towels, because when used properly, they can definitely work. Traditional Claybar, as we know, it's a lot of people's go-to. It gets rid of a lot of heavy decontamination. However, when used improperly, you can definitely damage paint in both aspects. So Claybar does have abrasive content in it, okay? So if you don't have a proper lube or you get too overzealous with it, apply too much pressure, you can definitely scratch and swirl the paint. There's a lot of videos out there that are telling people to stop using traditional Claybar, and I wouldn't say that, but I would say choose your weapon wisely. Every canvas is going to be different, and that's kind of what this video will explain. Now we already did this car. We just finished this car. We did a 2-step paint correction. We did about a 3 to 4 stage step in the decontamination process, which you'll see in some of the video. And you might sit there and say, well, there's steps in decontamination. There absolutely is. Like I said, you can use alkaline cleaners to do a chemical decontamination. You can use fallout. You can use traditional clay. You can use synthetic clay. We kind of use a little bit of everything in this. But a lot of it realistically was done with the clay towel. We do have another car coming in tomorrow, and that will be the second half of this video, basically to kind of show different things that we're using. There will be a wrap-up. This is a long video. I'm trying to be as informative as possible, so I'm trying to give you little tidbits here, show you some videos, show you some examples, and then we'll do a wrap-up at the end. But the other car, again, is white, and the reason why I chose to do this video with white cars is because you can see every speck of contaminant in the paint. And that really, raises some question, like if you're doing a black car and you're not doing the steps, are you fully getting the paint, decontaminated? Is it fully cleansed and prepped? That is where you have to use the right steps and try to trust your best judgment and use the skills that you have to properly do that. So yeah, like I said, these are some of the products that we use every day. This car turned out great. If you can't see, this is a 2012. It looks awesome. We got rid of all the contamination. We decontaminated it. We coated the wheels. We coated the paint. We coated the glass. It looks awesome. You'll see in the video actually just how bad this car was. The car that we have coming in tomorrow that will be part of the video, it's even worse. So when we dip into that, we'll talk a little bit more about pHs, about acids, about different cleaners that you can use on a chemical side that will help you when using a clay towel. And what you can do and what methods and what practices and procedures you can use to not damage paint with a traditional clay bar. So with that said, we're going to wrap up this part of the video. We're going to show some examples of the work we've done on this 2012 Mercedes and the 2019 Ford. Enjoy those videos. There'll be some, I don't want to say tutorial, but just kind of me talking in the background, explaining what's going on of the whole process. And then we're going to have the end of the video, the wrap up, where we kind of recap everything and go over everything and really prove and see, do clay towels really work? So stay tuned and you'll find out. All right, here we go. So this is one car that we're going to be doing a comparison here. It is a 2012 CLS 550. If you haven't guessed, it's white. So we are going to be doing a decontamination analysis or comparison. And basically what we're doing is we are going to compare light clay, heavy clay, and then 2 types of clay towels to, I guess, debunk or prove or unprove if clay towels actually work. Now, I don't know how well this is going to show up, but I'm gonna try to get the angles here. But this car does have pretty much the exact contamination I was looking for. This is basically fallout, and like this is the kind of contamination that is a clay towel gonna get it out. This is the kind of stuff that drives detailers crazy, okay? It's not hard to take a clay towel or clay bar and go over the surface and make it go from sounding like sandpaper to smooth. I mean, this paint is actually smooth. I just did a quick rinseless wash with O&R. There's very light, I mean, it doesn't sound bad at all, okay? It's easy to make the paint sound good with whether it be a traditional clay bar or a synthetic clay bar or a clay mitt, whatever you want to call it. But getting rid of things like this is what drives detailers crazy, okay? And can a clay mitt get rid of it? So this is basically my little analysis to prove, will it get rid of stuff like this, okay? We know it can make it smooth. We know that. I'm not denying that clay towels can't get rid of light contamination. They absolutely can, but can they get rid of this stuff without damaging the paint? That's the kicker, okay? And I'm just going to just lubricate this area. Obviously, it's always important to have a good lubricant when you're clay barring. I'm just gonna do half the hood here because there's gonna be more tests after. And this contamination is on the whole car. Okay, so what I am gonna do with this half though, if I can find some, yeah, there's some stuff over here, is I am just going to hit it with a fallout remover. And I will go into fallout removers a little bit more. Somebody had this on sniper mode. That's all right. Car needs it anyways, so I'm just gonna spray this on. I did another video showing SB3 Decon, which is a fallout remover. And like I said, I'll go more into that into the second half of this video, but we're just gonna let that sit and dwell. What we're gonna do over here, I'm just gonna take my SSP clay towel. This is a light to medium clay towel. They come in different grades. I don't really use heavy ones. I'll explain that in the video as well, but all I'm gonna do is just kinda go over this and see what it does. So when you use clay towels, you don't wanna use a ton of force. A lot of times when people use clay towels, they're not polishing the car, which is good. And you can actually hear a little bit of that grittiness, and then it goes away. So like I said, clay towels do a great job of getting rid of very light contamination, but it's all these little specks that drive you crazy. So we're just gonna go over this a few times here, like we did a thorough clay. See what happens. I think that's enough. So I'll put that up here, grab my towel. So believe it or not, it got rid of it. Now, there is still some of it, and it's hard to pick up on the video. I'm actually trying to find it in my camera. I can see it with my eye right here. There's a little rust spot, and that's from some fallout, and you're gonna get that on white cars. There's still a couple black specks up here. Again, hard to see on the camera. See if I can focus on there. Yeah, you can see it. So there's still some minor specks here. Now, a second pass could definitely remove that. There's another one, okay? So I'm not saying that a clay towel doesn't work. It can definitely be effective, but you gotta choose your car wisely, okay? So now what I'm gonna do, I keep dropping my O&R, I'm gonna just go back over this, because I didn't really do this section here. I'll do this with clay. In all honesty, what clay towel you choose, I think is kind of irrelevant. I think they're all gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna use a heavy clay. It's a little bit chilly, so. It's like 60 degrees in here this morning, so. And I am just going to do a very light section. And believe it or not, going over that speck there, it ain't going nowhere. So I'm going pretty vigorous on this. Or rigorous, what's the word? I don't know. Whatever. So I took that one off real easy. There was one up there, just zipped it right off. I think what it comes down to is really what's on the car, because some things come off really easy and some things don't. Now I had a little rust spot right there, some fallout. What that is some oxidized metal, and it came right off. Whereas over here, I gotta find it, with the clay towel, it did not. So let me hit this up real quick. Just lube this up here. Okay. Let's see how quick it comes off, if it comes off. And just like that, it's gone. This might be hard to pick up with the camera, but believe me when I tell you, it took it right off. So it's not to say clay towels are bad. because they're not. I use them a lot, especially on newer cars that don't really require a full clay bar. And I'll kind of discuss this at the end of the video about traditional clay versus clay towels and clay mitts or synthetics. They're not bad, they're just not for every car. So you can see, like right here, it took those little dots right off the front. So as most of us know, the traditional clay is obviously going to cut through those defects more. Also, what we don't realize is what is the clay towel leaving over that we can't see. If we come over here to where we sprayed the fallout remover, you can see that there is a ton of deposits on this trunk, okay? So, let's see. How much has been left over by the clay towel and the clay bar? So now typically what you would want to do is rinse this off, because what happened is all the metal shards and fallout that's landed on here, they've oxidized, but now the fallout is basically deoxidizing them, breaking them down and rounding them off and basically smoothing it out. What I actually like to do, I've told a couple people about this, is take my clay towel, use the fallout as a lube. It works really good. This is where it gets messy though. That's what stinks, when you use fallout. A little tip too, if you're doing this, have a bucket to dunk it in, because obviously now that's gonna be the, I don't want to, it's not the end of the towel, but it's definitely the, I'm not gonna be using that clay towel again. I could use it on this side maybe, but I'm just gonna spray this down with O&R again. So again, I don't know how much the camera is going to pick up here. It's still a little bit wet. But I can tell you that when you do something like a chemical decontamination, like a fallout, and then do a nano or a synthetic clay towel or clay mitt, it's much more effective. So that was just a quick kind of whip over. There's still a couple dots. I didn't really get on this corner real good, so I'm just kind of looking in this area. You've seen how much it was bleeding, and it got rid of a lot of the stuff. There's, you know, a little dot here. Thing is, when you get with a white car that has this much contamination, you are not going to get it knocked out in one shot. And sometimes you have to, you know, kind of guinea pig a car and see what's going to work and what's not going to work. I will be completely honest. We will wash this car, load it with fallout, nano clay it, rinse it down, pull it in, and do this again and spot clean it, and it'll be perfectly fine. I do that quite often. I think everyone has this depiction that clay towels don't work. They definitely can work, but they are not for every car, okay? So coming back here to where we did the nano clay and did the traditional clay, and right around here I kind of laid off. I didn't really go as thorough. I was mostly just showing those little dots, but this kind of shows you, whether it's with a clay bar or a nano clay bar or synthetic, whatever you want to call it, what can be left behind. But surprisingly, the clay towel did a really good job. And yes, some of this was hit up with the, you know, with the regular clay. It does a pretty good job. You have to understand that, you know, clay bar, it's not expensive, it's cheap, but it's time consuming. This is a lot faster. I think there's this mentality in detailing nowadays where everything has to be done quick. So it really is based off of your demographic and your pricing, okay? So I am going to be doing another vehicle, which is white, and kind of furthermore explaining the chemical process, the chemical decontamination, because there's other agents that you can use including just standard acid. I will explain fallout. Long or the short, it is an acid. I'll explain more about the chemistry of it and how it works. But this is kind of like phase one. I mean, what this kind of proves is no matter how much you clay or how long you take, there are still steps to properly decontaminate. It's not just physical, okay? This is physical decontamination here. All this stuff here is chemical, okay? Optimum, actually, if you guys are Optimum users, they recommend Ferrex with the Optimum clay towel. But this won't damage this towel. This is an SSP towel. So right where I just did that speck is now gone. So, if you are having issues with removing heavier fallout, there are other methods. Some people just don't like Claybar. Some people, I know when I started using Claybar a long time ago, I would use it and whip over the paint and look at the car and say, where'd all these scratches come from? That stuff gets embedded in here, and then the Claybar is really meant to be used a couple times and chucked. This stuff is great, and I'll explain the way this works and why it's less likely to scratch and swirl the paint. But you can just see that second pass, because there's that other specs right there. That speck was here, it's now gone. So when like I said, there's ways where you can still use clay towels and still get great results. So I'm gonna finish prepping this car, and we're gonna have a little bit more video, so on to the next. All right, so here is another example of clay mitts. Do they work or do they not work? So here we've washed this car. This car has not been treated with any chemical decontamination agent. This is just rinseless washed real quick, so you can see and actually hear all these contaminants. My general opinion on clay mitts is they are best suited for light contamination. Heavy stuff like this, they're not gonna touch. So I'm gonna kind of show you. So all I'm gonna do here is just a little pre-soak, and I'm doing this one-handed, so bear with me. So I'm gonna go over this area and see how much of it actually cleans up. Kind of showed some of this on the other car, basically saying, it's only going to do so much without some kind of chemical boost, like fallout, okay? So it actually is getting rid of a lot of it, but it's not going to get rid of all of it. So I'm just trying to do this small little area here. So you can see it did get rid of a lot, but now you could spend more time, but stuff like that, some of this other stuff here is all still left over. That in particular probably won't come out without heavy clay or fallout, so you can see some of them here. Now, what I'll do is just hit it up again. And I'm just gonna take traditional heavy clay. And just go over this. Let me back up here. You don't need to be that close, holy cow. The only downside to using traditional clay is, A, if you get overzealous, as I like to say, you can scratch and swirl the paint. And I'm gonna put a light on this and see, because I went hard over that little oxidized piece of fallout. You could potentially mar it and swirl it, okay? You're not really gonna see a lot in this clay, I mean, you can still see how, even though we nano clayed it, there's still some dirt and some stuff that it pulled out within the clay. But the only downside to clay, traditional clay, is the time, and you can definitely damage paint more. Can you grab me a scan grip real quick? But you can see those areas where the clay mitt left behind are now gone with traditional clay. And you can actually see right here is a perfect example. right where I clayed, it marred it all up. Okay, so if you pan over here, okay, so that's just wet, okay? You go over here where it's completely dry. So yes, there are swirls, but what I'm kind of trying to show you is it almost looks like the car's been sanded. It's got like sand. See those that little, it's like those patches, those round patches, and that's all where I claybarred, okay? That's what can happen with clay, is you can actually create more work for yourself. So any of you guys who sand, do wet sanding, you know what it looks like when you wet sand. It's that frosted over, that's what we're getting right here. If we go down, it's not here. This has not been clayed at all, okay? There's some very light, but it's very heavy up here. So this is showing what Claybar will do, okay? It can definitely create more work. There you go, that's a good shot. Which it shouldn't be, but you never know. So yeah, no real damage here from the clay mitt, but where I used traditional Claybar, you can see how a heavy clay did damage the paint. Now this is something where you might want to sit there and say, hey, you know, maybe I shouldn't use that heavy of a Claybar and go to a light clay, but to get rid of that heavy contamination especially, you're gonna have to do something heavy or chemical. So this is just another proof there. All right, so this is just a quick example of how using an acid can remove certain types of fallout. So I did this on purpose. So we did this whole back bumper and trunk area, got rid of you know, all the contamination, the fallout and everything. I'm gonna use SP3 Destroy, which is actually a water spot remover, but it can be used to aesthetically remove visual contamination and also to help furthermore cleanse the surface and prep the surface. So you can see all the little rust spots there. So I'm just gonna take Destroy and wipe over it. And it does take some agitation, but it will get rid of it. Now the kicker is you can see the other contamination is still kind of hanging around. It's not getting rid of all of it, but in regards to oxidized metal shards, the heavy fallout, it will get rid of it. And you never want to scrub too much, obviously, because it will scratch and swirl the paint. But if you ever have little areas where you cannot get Claybar, or perhaps fallout isn't working, just go to an acid. You can see it cleans it up pretty good. And again, if you let the chemical dwell and sit, eventually this will all subside. It's not going to be a instantly removing procedure or one of those more gratifying procedures where you see instant results, but if you let the chemical sit, working in with a microfiber, it will remove contamination. Like I said, fallout is an acid. It's not a heavy acid, but it's still an acid. So when you go with a heavier acid, you can actually clean things up very well. And you can see there's still a couple, but if you just let this sit and then go back at it, eventually it will break it down. All right, so here's an example of that method I was talking about. You can see how bad this car really is. Whenever you're using any sort of fallout remover, like I said, it is an acid, so you do want to make sure you're not in direct sunlight, or you don't want it to dry on the car. So we are doing it indoors for those reasons. But this had heavy contamination, and this is just taking it right off. So you can kind of see there's some black specks. So watch those couple black specks there, and you just go over it a few times and it's gone. So despite the myths of clay towels not being effective, like I said, you have to choose your canvas wisely, but this is a very this is a typical white car. A lot of you guys probably see cars that are like this. You know, they got the rust spots, they got all the little black dots. And you sit there and you take traditional clay and you 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 take forever. Fallout remover as a lube is amazing because you are getting the chemical process of getting within those pores, deoxidizing and breaking down that foreign contaminant, and then you have the physical abrasion. Basically is what any form of clay is. It has abrasives to a certain degree in it to grab that contaminant and lift it off the surface. So this is a method that I've been using for a really long time, and I think if you're going to stick with clay towels, this is the best way to get your paint decontaminated and clean. I'm gonna see if there's any other, it just cleans it up so quick, it's crazy. And what we'll do is we're gonna back it out and we're gonna spray it down, we'll hand wash it, and then pull it back in and do this again. But I don't wanna get too overzealous with my towel. I'm gonna dunk my towel and clean my towel here. That's a key element, is just keep your towel clean. But I'll show you real quick here so you can see, this is the last little spot I'll do because I don't want my towel to get too loaded. You can see all those little black spots. I'm not putting a lot of pressure. It's literally just the weight of my hand. What I'll do is if it's a more contaminated area, I will decrease my hand pressure and increase my hand speed. And then it takes almost all of them out. There's a couple little spots right here. But for the most part, it works great. All right, well there you go. There were the results, and although I did neglect to really show how contaminated and stained that one side of the truck is, I tried to kind of show you with the running boards and the handle. That one side in particular was heavily just caked on with iron to the point to where it was orange, you know, and you could see it on the handle. In all reality, there really is no clear winner here. Both of these fallout removers were absolutely phenomenal. I have used fallout removers in the past, ones like 3D BDX, some other knockoff brands that wouldn't even touch you know, removing that iron. Like, the iron is still there. You can still see tinges of orange. For the most part, it removed almost all of it, which is really awesome, because a lot of times when you get heavy iron deposits like that, you have to go over it with a heavy acid. As I've said before, the majority, not all, the majority of fallout removers have some form of acid in them. So they do have a little bit of caustic properties. And again, I'll reiterate, basically the way that these fallout removers work is they deoxidize the surface. So when those ferrous metals from your exhaust, from your brakes, just from environmental factors land on your paint, they embed and they oxidize. They either come off hot or they come off raw and they oxidize. What these do is they basically deoxidize them, degrade them, and break them down. So they go from being sharp and pointy and spread out to they basically get shrink down and dematerialized by the fallout removers. I think why these two are so close, and these are some quick pros and cons, is they do have similar additives. They're not the same, they definitely are different, but both of them basically contain butoxyethanol, which is a form of lubricant. That's what gives you kind of like that sudsing action. Now, I will say that the Meguiar's does have more. It contains a higher amount, which makes it thicker. So what I've seen from this, and this is part of my review, is the Meguiar's is a little bit thicker, okay? So you're gonna have a little bit more working time. If you use a clay towel or anything like that, it's gonna suds up more, and that's because it has more of that butoxyethanol in it. So it has a little bit more working time, it's a little bit thicker, a little bit richer. The SB3 Decon, it still has that, just not as much content, so it's a little bit thinner. However, where these two products really differ is on a pH rating, and you've seen in the video how I showed those pH strips, and this is basically explaining it. The Meguiar's, because it does have a sulfonate, which is a heavier acid, it's a little bit more caustic. This has a lower pH, okay? So this has a pH between 4.5 and 5. So that's not super acidic. Obviously neutral is 7, but when, 4 and 5, you still got to be careful. If you're working with it in direct sunlight, I wouldn't recommend that. But my guesstimation is, if that's a word, is that's why they put more of that soapy ethanol in there, is to give you more working time. So if you are using it out in the sun, it doesn't dry and doesn't potentially stain or damage the paint or trim. That would be my guess. So because this is more acidic, they put more of that butoxyethanol in there to give you the ability to have more working time. It's more sudsy, it's more soapy, you can work it around quicker without it drying out. The SB3 is almost neutral. It's around 6, maybe 6.5. So it isn't quite as acidic, and that's because it does not use as heavy of an acid. It uses a thioglycolic acid, I have to say that right, which is not as heavy of an acid. Like I said, it's between 6 and 6.5 if you've seen those pH strips. So it is not as acidic. So this would be safer to use for a mobile detailer, in my honest opinion. It isn't as thick. It's a little bit more watery, so it does tend to dry out. But again, I think that's why they put more of that carrier in the Meguiar's. It's thicker, it's more acidic, but you have more work time, whereas the SB3, it is not as acidic. However, it lacks more of that lubricant, but it's okay if it dries out because it's not as acidic. So, and really what was crazy was the SB3 was bleeding a lot more. So when I first started seeing it, I'm like, oh, SB3 is going to wipe the floor with Meguiar's on this one. And they were very similar. Like I said, there really is no clear-cut winner on this. This is just, these are two products that I use and two products that I wanted to compare because they're so close in price. And realistically, these are both fantastic products. The price point on these are absolutely fantastic. Below $50 per gallon. Of course, that's without shipping. And you can get them through certain websites and certain places like that for a little bit cheaper. But honestly, if you go right through SB3, 49 bucks a gallon. You cannot beat that price. Meguiar's, like I said, the retail price on it I think is higher. I think it's like $79, but there are a handful of websites where you can get this product right around that same $49 price point. So really either one is fantastic. If I had to pick a winner based on smell, I would give it to SB3. Meguiar's is very strong. It does, these both have sulfur in them, so they both have that egg, that rotten egg fragrance. However, SB3 does have a fragrance. So it smells more like cherries, whereas Meguiar's smells more like hot trash. It just stinks, and a lot of fallout removers are like that. But in all reality, you really cannot go wrong with either one of these fallout removers. They are absolutely fantastic. They are a crucial part in decontaminating and prepping your car for really any sort of protectant, whether it be a wax, a sealant, or a coating. These are products that you can spray on, that you can rinse off, that they'll help get light contamination, or if you are to choose, if you wanted to choose a Claybar, whether it be traditional or a synthetic, will help you really decontaminate heavy contaminated cars as well. I will include links of both of the websites where you can purchase these. Like I said, both of these are fantastic. I highly recommend using either one of these products. You will have great success with them. If you've liked this video, if it was helpful, please comment. like and subscribe for more videos. We will have a lot more videos coming up, including ceramic coating testing, different polishes, and again, these are all products that I use at my shop. I am not brand biased. I try to be as open and honest as possible with all my videos and give you that little bit of that scientific spin on things, because I think that's one thing that's really lacking in these videos. These are not sponsored videos. These are upfront and honest, and a lot of people really appreciate it. So hopefully this has helped you kind of see how good these products are. Hopefully you add them to your arsenal because they are absolutely fantastic. So please tune in for next week's video. Hopefully I can get it done in a week, where we will be comparing. What are we going to be doing next week? I don't know. Probably sealants, maybe coatings. All I know is I'll have something up next week. It really just depends on what cars I get in here. So thanks for tuning in. Again, like and subscribe and check out next week's video. Thanks.